So that one will broadcast to the room. This one is going to broadcast to the live stream.
Okay.
Sorry, just because we have to go through the phone today, it's a little.
It's okay, that's fine. Yeah. Let me test this here, Jamie. I think it should be fine. How is how is this? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Perfect. I appreciate it. Morning. I checked, and actually, it was recorded, but they had problems streaming it. So, so they have it on record. Yeah.
Okay.
So now I have so I have two microphones right now. I have no idea. One is recording or one is streaming.
Okay.
Good. Believe me,
Chocolate cheesecake.
I saw people with two different pieces, so
Oh yeah. You want me to save one for you?
too much. But Pastor Jan preached this morning. Really, really good sermon. Really good sermon.
That's for you.
Jan, he's the other one. He comes here sometimes. Good morning, David. Good morning. Was sign in there. Yes, get. Yeah, there's three. Yeah, you have both. You have all.
I have three different things,
See,
right?
yeah, you're gonna be kept busy.
Okay.
We have three pieces for you. One from last week,
Hey, thank you.
and then you want last week's readings.
I should. It's probably on my dining room table, so I won't forget to bring it.
Good morning, Carol.
Morning.
There are three pieces here.
Oh, I had this one last.
Okay, so these are two new ones just for you. Oh, I'm giving handouts here today. I'm giving handouts. These are new pieces.
Okay.
Okay, two of them. That's just for your fun. Thank you, Jamie. Your fun reading.
Okay. Those two. All right. Excellent.
These are two. Good morning. Two fun pieces of reading for you when you're.
Okay. Better done. Okay.
Morning. There are a couple of pieces. There are a couple of pieces up here if you want to grab and sign in here for Pastor Dave. No, that's fine. Grab one of these. This is just for. Grab those. And these are Here. Yeah. All right, I think we'll get started. I think let's go ahead and get started. You will see the text that we've been following, and it's up here. And then there are a couple of other pieces here that is yours for the taking. And I want to say a word about these. A few weeks ago, we were talking about the exile in Babylon, and because we were discussing Isaiah and the challenges that the people face, not surprisingly, and so much of it had to do. Let me say this carefully. It's not that the people were not at some level at fault, but so much of it had to do with the leaders. And what started out as actually an annex of Israel in 597, because, once again, the king was thinking, I can flex my muscles and see what happens with Nebuchadnezzar. And so it was annexed for a while. But a decade later is when the exile happened, because, of course, we never learned from our history. The following king, guess what he did? I can take you on. I'll flex my muscles, and of course, it led to the exile. And while in exile, right, you have this remarkable letter from Jeremiah to the people that we looked at. And the letter said, you remember? Many things, but it said this remarkable statement, which went something like this: seek the welfare of your captors, for in their welfare you will find your welfare. Okay? And in the Hebrew, that word welfare is repeated thrice in the translation. In the Hebrew, it is the word shalom, okay? Which is to say, seek the well-being of your captors, because in their well-being you will find your well-being. Now, and so we talked about the metaphor of rubbing salt in your wounds, right? So you're telling me that I'm in exile by this foreign power and enslaved, and now you're telling me, take care of my captors. And by the way, if I don't take care of my captors, what? I will suffer, because my well-being will depend on me taking care of their well-being. So go get married, build houses, live in them, plant trees, eat the fruits, and so on. In other words, it's going to be for a while. And in that context, we have this Psalm 137, which, it's a psalm of, as you know from the book of Psalms, these were ancient songs that the people sang. In the book of Psalms, we have a variety, we have different categories, and one of the largest category of Psalms is called, loosely, Psalms of Lament. Okay? And Psalms of Lament, as it tells you, right? You're pouring your heart out. And with one or two exceptions, the Psalms of Lament also end on a note of praise. It's like, here's what I feel. I'm brokenhearted. It's terrible, the pain that, but don't get me wrong. We love you, Lord, kind of thing. Okay? This psalm is really difficult because you can feel the taunting that is happening. And it ends on this incredible, painful, violent note that said, if you really want to know how I feel about what you have done, this is how I feel. What I'd really like to do is to take your little children and bash their heads against the rocks. Okay? Now, and you don't have to be reading the Hebrew, but does everyone have this? Pick it up, it's there if you don't. But you will notice I highlighted that first word, okay, on the right. It's in red. And if you notice at the bottom, at the very last verse, it's also there. It's actually the same word, and it's in red, highlighted. And the reason is to show you the depth of despair. This Psalm 1 verse 1 essentially begins, it says, Ashrei Haish, blessed is the person, blessed is the man, but blessed is the person is translated. And the word actually, Asher or Ashrei, it can be translated blessed, but it really has to do more with happiness. Happy is the person. Okay, happy is the person who, and it goes on, who loves his brother and so on. And happy are those who dwell together as brothers. It's a beautiful thing, right? And it's the same word that is used here. And you want to know how this would make me feel to bash your children's head against the rocks? It will bring great joy and happiness to me. Okay? So I tell you this because it's this strange juxtaposition of something that is violent, but in the very act of violence reflects the depth of pain, if that makes sense. I am in so much pain for what you have done to me. This is what I'd like to do to you. And in the second piece, as we move on, if you haven't gotten it, this is a brief, what is it, page and a half, 2 pages, 3 pages? It's an excerpt of an essay, an article, actually, a chapter, that was published, I don't know, 2 years ago, I guess, 2-3 years ago. And it's a collection in a book of Psalms. And it's edited by 2 scholars, one from the University of Amsterdam and one from the University of Tel Aviv. 2 women who are international scholars, and they put together a collection of pieces by scholars actually across the world on various psalms. And I was privileged to be asked to write a chapter on one. And this is an excerpt of that chapter, and it's based on Psalm 137, and it's entitled Song of a Broken Heart. And the reason is this. In difficult times, it would be easy, let me say that as clearly as I know how, potentially it would be easy for those of us who might feel a sense of brokenheartedness because of whatever is going on, that are maybe human instinct. The human impulse is to do what? Get back revenge, seek revenge, right? I want to let you know how much I'm hurt, so what am I going to do? I'm going to hurt you in turn. Okay? And if I can't actually get to hurt you, I will hurt you by extension, kind of thing. Okay? And in this piece, I'm making an argument that I don't think that having that feeling deep within us is necessarily wrong. Now, stay with me now. Okay? I don't want you to leave here thinking, well, as it turned out, he's just a violent guy. I don't think it is necessarily wrong. What I'm arguing is that it's a natural human instinct in the Psalms where the psalmist is appealing to whom? To God. Where the only way this works is that if you believe that your faith is such that you can pour out to God from the depth of your soul. That's the only way it works. And these are people who have decided that, Lord, if you want to know how I feel, this is how I feel. Okay? The problem is, therefore, not appealing to God. The problem becomes what? Acting out on this as a human issue. Okay? And so this little piece says, this is how we should try to deal with this. I am so angry. By the way, who among us have not said, you know what? I could just kill you for doing this. By the way, you're not going to go out and do that. Or this makes me so angry. Okay? This is why we have all of these sort of axioms in our vernacular that says, count from 1 to 10. Sleep on it. Or, in my case, as a dean, dealing with faculty, I have to count from 1 to 100 regularly. Or I'd go nuts. Should I? Okay. I'm going to point back to you for telling me I should try this, right? So here's the thing. What the little piece does is to invite us not to sort of keep within us and harbor it, but to understand that we can appeal to God. We can appeal to God. And by the way, do not give God a timeline that says, I'm going to appeal to you, Lord, and if you can do this within the next 48 hours, that would be great. However, if you don't, I'm going to have to take matters into my own hand. No. So, see what you think about this excerpt from the piece. The second thing I want to emphasize, which I was struck by this morning, once again, because these things are so connected. Jesus says to Peter and to the sailors, remember now, cast your net into what? Into the deep waters. And why? What's that? There's more fish? Can you be sure about that? No. Can you see if there's more fish? No. Okay? But those are the choices. You can fish around in shallow waters where you see guppies, and okay, congratulations. Okay? Or maybe you can fish in deep waters that actually could be murky. And remember, when are they fishing? At night, right? And you can only do that if you have a depth of belief and hope that there lies within the darkness that we cannot see something that could be good. But again, in order to do that, you have to have a particular depth of faith. That I will take your word for this. I will believe this. And here's the thing. If it doesn't work today, I'm going to try again tomorrow. Because there might be something that lies beneath the surface that I cannot see, but I believe could be there. And I will trust you on this. Now, we don't want to end up in all of our time at our disposal to parse every word from every text. I get it. But sometimes it's helpful to sort of reflect on why Jesus did not just say, cast your net into the waters. That would be perfectly fine. But there's something about the depth here that we cannot see, but it lies beneath. So, back to our friend Abraham here. Okay? God is going through this internal debate. Am I going to tell Abraham what I'm about to do with Sodom and Gomorrah? God is wondering, should I really tell him? And God decides to do what? To tell him. On what basis? One word. On what basis does God decide to tell him? I'm going to read the text to you. Okay. It goes like this. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do, seeing that Abraham shall become a great and mighty nation? And last week, remember, we talked about the change of his name, right? From exalted father to father of nations. From Avram or Abram to Abraham. Okay? And so the text says, no, for I have chosen him. No, for I have chosen him. Now, this is an unreasonable question. So let me preface it by telling you it's an unreasonable question. What do you think? What do you imagine, if I could get this? What do you imagine chosen could be in Hebrew there? And you're looking at me thinking, you really have lost it. What could chosen be here? I need to tell Abraham because I have chosen him. And the word for chosen, we'll come back to this in a second. Stay with me now. The word for chosen in Hebrew, which is pronounced yada, which I know does not really help matters here. But it is the word that means to know. I'm going to say this again because that word emerges several times in what we're about to look in the text. The word means to know. The translation says chosen, and that should tell you everything or most everything we need to know about the challenges of translations. And when someone tells you, well, I'm just going to take the way the text is literally, by the way, that is also, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out. Ridiculous. Okay? You can substitute absurd also. Okay? Or if you really want to be, you can say nuts. But here's the thing. Okay? No translation and taking things literally is also an interpretation of the text. Okay? That is simply a fact. That's not my interpretation. It's a fact. And it's also crazy. But here we have the word yada, which means to know, is translated chosen. So let me put it this way. I need to tell Abraham what I'm about to do to Sodom and Gomorrah because I have what? Known him. I have known him. And know is a relational word, right? You can't say, I just know. Somebody is going to say, could you fill in the predicate here? What do you know? You can't just say, I know. I know kids say that. I know. What do you know? And that's when we run into. So God says, it's important that I do this. So here we go. This is a text among many in the Bible, not just Old Testament and New Testament, many in the Bible, right? That gives us the permission to question God, right? Now, not us in this room because we're enlightened, but folks out there do not want to question God. Because the perception is that if you question God, it's a demonstration of what? Bad faith or doubt. Okay, how could you possibly question God? Except, of course, guess what? We have it all over in the biblical text. Now, I want to be clear. To question does not mean that one has to be obnoxious. To question does not mean that you have to be arrogant. Right? We have plenty of that in our society, as you all know, right? The question does not mean you have to be stomping your feet and be belligerent. You may simply question. And by the way, as sometimes we get older, right, we stop questioning. But often, who questions a lot? Children, right? They question a lot. Sometimes, you want to say, stop, please, okay? But they question because there is a kind of a curiosity and innocence there. We want to find out, right? And it's not just why. Sometimes they're just questions. I want to know. And then as we get older, we imagine that if we question something, either we show some kind of an ignorance or we have doubt. No. So here goes. And I think I have this up here. Right. It begins, so the men turned from there and went towards Sodom while Abraham remained standing before the Lord. And this is where we ended up last time. Right? And the importance of this phrase is that, of course, it's not uncommon in our society. I'm standing before the judge, right? I'm standing before the principal, right? None of us have ever had that, right? A few weeks ago, I had to have a call to a faculty member, and it was simply we wanted to check on an office space issue, and I called a faculty member, and his first response was, "Am I in some kind of trouble?" Okay, and I had to step back and think, what are we, back in high school? You're going to see the principal? I just had a question about your office space. Okay. I don't want you, so it was not a coming and standing before the dean kind of thing. It's just a simple question. But there is an idea that if you come and stand before, right, the one in front of whom you're standing is the one who is going to what? Make a judgment or some such thing. So Abraham stood before the Lord, except for one slight problem. Remember? The earlier manuscript said, the Lord stood before Abraham. And so, by the way, just for the record, right? Sometimes this is what happens over time, because interpreters have decided that we cannot have a human being standing in judgment of God. So Abraham stood before the Lord according to the text. I'm going to go with the earlier version. But we have this God and human being here. So Abraham remained standing before the Lord, and Abraham came near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" Abraham is questioning God. Abraham is questioning God. I'm sorry, I know that was not clear what I just said. Abraham is questioning God. And this is not a question out of kind of, I've lost something. Could you tell me where? This is an existential question. Will you really destroy the righteous, the Tzaddikim, with the wicked, with the evil? Are you collapsing the division between this by wiping out all? And you and I know, the moment we begin to generalize, it is a dangerous, slippery slope. Because no longer do I want to take any of you, or individually, let's say, or even a small community seriously, right? Because we say, what do we say? Well, all these immigrants. And then all of a sudden you have this massive sweep of people. All of these old people. All of these young people. We hear this, right? All of the Gen X, right? Well, what do you expect from college students? Kind of stuff. Last week, there was something, what used to be Twitter on that thing, okay, by a certain person who is the wealthiest person in the universe posting a note that says, so the Lutheran religion, we have to cut them out now from federal funding. Because, why? They are laundering money. By the way, I'm not making this up. They are laundering money, and we have to stop this because Lutheran World Relief is, we're giving money. And what are you doing with our money? They're laundering money. And by the way, the fact that you can say that as a reminder doesn't mean it has to be true, right? But the word is out there now. So beware, Lutherans. I'm not making this up. Question. So, are you really? So we make this sweeping judgment, right? About people. And Abraham says, God, you've got to be better than this. You cannot possibly be wiping out the good with the evil. Abraham is questioning God. And then Abraham, of course, in this famous sequence of events, says, suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Are you really going to sweep away the place and not forgive it for the 50 righteous in it? Are you really going to destroy this entire city of Sodom and Gomorrah? What if there are 50 righteous people? Right? And Abraham says, I'm, by the way, and I'm perfectly happy to be part of that sketch. Why? Right? And what has God found in Sodom and Gomorrah? There's one word. It is not what it has come to mean. There's one word. God, no, not sin. Thank you for playing. But it is an outcry. That's the word. I have heard an outcry. And it's an interesting thing. God said, I've heard an outcry, so what does God need to do? It's also, by the way, in the Tower of Babel story, a similar kind of sequence. I have heard about this, therefore I have to go and check this out for myself. And naturally you're thinking, Lord, can you just see it from on high? Okay. But we have this kind of also human quality to the divine, which, by the way, will serve us well when we think of Jesus, who is understood to be what? Fully human and fully divine. A little bit of a problem for many Christians who would prefer to see Jesus as what? Fully divine, right? The problem there is that all of the suffering then becomes farcical, because then you don't really feel pain. But the fully human, of course, ensures that that's there. So Abraham says, are you really going to do this? And then he says, far be it for you to do such a thing. And scholars really struggle with that statement. We use it, right? It's like, let me put it in sort of a context that we use. And see what you think. Imagine I'm coming to Pastor Jan here, who, by the way, excellent sermon, I might say. Okay, very cerebral thinking. And I say to Pastor Jan, far be it for me to tell you what to preach about. Right? Far be it for me to tell you this. What am I saying to him? I'm going to tell you. Yes, I'm going to tell you what you should preach about. And I know what you should preach about. But far be it for me to tell you what you should preach about. Well, what you're preaching about is not what I should be. You can see where this is going, right? Abraham is saying, far be it from me to tell you, Lord, what. And scholars struggle with this far be it. Because Abraham at this moment is giving the impression that he knows better in terms of what to do, as opposed to what God does. It's really, some scholars said, it should more be translated into using the language of what you are about to do is profane. Far be it for me to tell you, but what you're about to do is profane. Now, we know this word, right? It's part of our common, it's in our lexicon. We know this word. What does it mean, though? It is the opposite of sacred, right? And in fact, we have a book called The Sacred and the Profane. But what does the word mean? Not what it refers to. And what it means, as we go back to the Latin, is profanum, which means fanum is the word for temple. What is profane is what is outside of the temple. What is sacred is inside of the temple. By the way, it's a dichotomy that has some issues, but what Abraham is saying, what you're planning to do is profane. It is not sacred. It's not. It's outside of that which we consider sacred. It is profane. But far be it for me to tell you, Lord, because I imagine you would know better. This is what Abraham is saying. And the Lord says, I will forgive the whole place for 50. And by the way, we can have a skit about this. Okay? I don't know who wants to play God, but I'm happy to do the Abraham thing. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is judge? What is just? Abraham, by the way, is appealing to the justice of God. Abraham is appealing to the holiness of God. Lord, as the judge of the entire universe, you cannot be doing this. Please remember, Abraham is advocating on behalf of whom? Sodom and Gomorrah. But Lord, you can't do this. As a God of justice and holiness and love and what's going on here? And Abraham said, let me take it upon myself to speak to the Lord, I who are, and you have to love Abraham. Lord, forgive me. I mean, I'm just dust and ashes. But if you don't mind, I have a few questions. Suppose 45, not 50. But what if 45 were righteous? Are you still going to destroy the city? And Lord says, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. So we have something going here now. Again, he spoke. How about 40? By the way, we're in the midst of kind of a bordering thing here, right? How about 40? You know, can we talk? How about 40? And the Lord says, I will not do it for 40. Then he said, and then Abraham now, of course, Lord, don't be upset with me here. But I need to speak a little bit more. How about 30? How about 30? And God answered, I will not do it if I can find 30 righteous people there. If I can find 30 righteous in Sodom and Gomorrah who are not part of the outcry, right? I will not destroy the city. And Abraham says, let me take it upon myself to speak to the Lord. How about 20? How about 20? And the Lord says, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. And then he said, oh, do not let the Lord be angry if I speak just once more. By the way, and Abraham is probably getting to the point where he realizes he's pushing his luck here. Okay, because I think he believed that if I asked for 45, God might say, would you just stop? But the Lord did not. You notice, there is no kind of wavering on the part of God here. There is no ridicule on the part of God. There is no Abraham, stop this nonsense on the part of God. There is no Abraham, do you know son? There's none of that. Abraham asked, and God said, what? Okay. Abraham asked again, and God said, okay. And then he gets to the point where he says, suppose 10 are found there. And God says, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy. It's a remarkable story. Okay, let me pause here. Asking God questions, and I will say this as straightforwardly as I know how, is not a sin. I don't know how else to put it. By the way, this is also not asking God that I have a catalog of things I would like for my birthday. I don't mean that. Which is, by the way, what many prayers now, well, Lord, if you don't mind, hang on, I have a list, okay? But this, by the way, is actually, if you're looking for a definition of intercession, on behalf of those who are probably in no position to advocate on their own behalf. Abraham intercedes on behalf of a people where there is an outcry. And remember, we talked about what outcry is, or what a cry is. It's the same word used elsewhere. Okay? If you recall, in transliterated in English, the word is tzedakah, which is commonly, not always, but commonly translated as righteous. It's the same word also in Arabic, interestingly. Same word in Arabic. In the same way that shalom in Hebrew is peace. What? As-salam. Salam. It's the same word, actually. It's just because the vowels come later. Okay? This means righteous. Outcry is this. It looks so close as to be identical, except one letter is missing. Okay? So instead, I looked for tzedakah, but I found se'ekah. I looked for justice, but I found an outcry. It is what runs contrary to righteousness. Okay? That's the issue. And it is always striking, because here is the thing. Abraham is not saying, Lord, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are righteous and therefore you should spare them. No, he understands. But here, I want to point out something. In Christian theology and within Christianity and many sermons over time, right, this is often a text that is alluded to. Because as God said that God was willing to save an entire city for the sake of 10, in Christ what do we have? God will save the entire world for the sake of 1. Okay? And we see this parallel from time to time, right? So Christ becomes, for the sake of one, I will save the universe. Who stops asking here? Abraham. Did God say to Abraham, you push your luck too far? No. Abraham stopped asking because somehow he must have imagined that God could not possibly save a city for the sake of one righteous. And they went their separate ways. And there is, I have to say, in there a lesson for us, isn't there? Right? You ask, but you also have to wonder. And Abraham stopped asking. He stopped asking. And then we get to a part of this story that is just absolutely, in my estimation, horrific. So Abraham returned to his place. God went on. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of Sodom. Very common, by the way. This, we will find in the prophets in particular, the gate is where judgments take place, cases are heard, and that kind of stuff. It's not unusual. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground, very much like Abraham, right? With the visitors. Then he said, "Please, my lords," and you see what we talked about last time, all right? Again, in the English translation, because we have to sort of distinguish in the Hebrew, all right? There are different ways to talk about whether it's going to be Yahweh, whether it's going to be God, or whether it's just going to be a guy who has a suit on, who I respect as my Lord. Okay? And there are different words that are used here. All right? So you will notice that as far as Lot is concerned, all right, my lords, he sees two guys. Right? He does not know the identity here. So please, my lords, so that's why you see the common, the lowercase or the common wording of lords. Turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night. Wash your feet, then you can rise early in the morning and go your way. It sounds like what? It's hospitality, right? Come, right? Wash your feet, have a meal, spend the night, rest, and go on your way. And they said, "No, we will spend the night in the square," but he urged them strongly. Now, I'm just going to throw this out here. Where is the line between invitation and coercion? Where is the line between invitation and coercion? And so I say to you, come and take a load off of your feet, have something to drink, have something to eat, spend the night and rest. And you're saying, no, I would rather not to do that. And I would say, but I want to. And I strongly say, right? Now, you might think that this is a stretch, but we'll get to a text in the book of Judges where that kind of insistence led to great violence. There is a line between invitation, and in my view, in matters of invitation, there cannot be coercion. Okay? I can't insist that, no, I can invite you. I can make an argument why, but as for me and my house, choose kind of thing, right? For people who don't think that the Bible has to do with choice. But go ahead, choose. No, we don't want to do this, he urged them strongly. So they turned aside to him, entered his house, and he made them a feast, including unleavened bread. It's kind of odd. It means there's no time for what? Rising, right? And they ate. Now, before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house. And that language, by the way, surrounding, right? It's when you're surrounded, we're surrounded by, right? You know, either something grand is going. I'm surrounded by what? Remember? A host of people who care deeply, who will bring their goodness to me, right? Or, right? Exactly the opposite. I'm surrounded by people who will probably generate violence, and you cannot escape. You are what? Surrounded. And we hear that language, right? Come out with your hands up, right? Kind of thing. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we may know them." So, when I said earlier that God chose to tell Abraham because Abraham was what? Remember? God's chosen, right? And the word that is used there is know. God has known Abraham, Abraham has known God, and therefore I need to tell him what I'm planning to do. What's the word that is used here? It's the same word. Okay? Send them out so that we could know them. By the way, this is not a hospitality greeting group, welcome to the village, right? They surrounded the house and they're saying, "We saw some people come in here, send them out." And I want to say, because I know what the story of Sodom and Gomorrah has come down to us to be, right? And I alluded to this last time. If you go into the text looking for homosexuality as a term in the text, what's going to happen? You're not going to find it. Okay? But it's funny what happens over time as ideas are generated out and then are spread. This is where we are. By the way, I want to be clear. After our session today and next week and the next week, will the whole country then say, "Oh, well, now that we know"? No, it's going to continue. Now, those of us who are enlightened will say, "Well, okay now." But here's the thing. The men, all of the men, young and old, okay, if we had to be blunt about it, get to know, and even that language has come down to mean what? Primarily what? Having to do, if someone wants to get to know the other person, biblically it's come down to mean what? Sex. Except for one slight problem. Less than 2% of its use in the Bible has to do with that. And most of the time, even so, it might have to do with intimacy. Okay? And often we talk about God knowing a people. It's not about that. It's about a close, intimate relationship. Here, it's a perversion of the very idea of what it means to be chosen as a people. In the case of Abraham, send them out so that, frankly, bluntly, we want to get to know them. And when you have an entire city surrounding the house, and we want to do to these people who have entered here, it would be something like gang rape. That's what it amounts to. Send them out so that we can get to know them. And and Lot says something here. And let me pause for a second. It does not identify who is the leader of Sodom and Gomorrah. It doesn't identify who is, I don't know, the king, if there is none. Okay? It doesn't identify this is the chieftain of, no, none of that. Okay? But you have to wonder, what kind of guidance, what kind of leadership, what kind of principle must be generated for those who are in charge that an entire city has become so absolutely void of anything that is decent and good. And that's where we are. Everyone. It says young, it says old, it says all the people. And what kind of leadership must there be that would lead all of these people to think this is a good idea, and anyone who enters into this city as a foreigner, as a sojourner, needs to be dealt with violently? What kind of a leader or leadership? And so that we are again reminded, when Jonah went to Nineveh, reluctantly by the way, even the second time, right? And remember, he had this terrible sermon that says, very short, and that, brevity is beautiful, I get that. But this one, repent or in 40 days what happened? You die. And I'm going to sit out here waiting for you to die. What does the leader, the king, so to speak, do in that situation? He leads from the top and says to everyone, including the animals, which is a little weird, but says to everyone, do what? Put on sackcloth, a time of mourning. Repent. It might be that the Lord will change his mind. And it did. Was Nineveh sort of a model city? No. They needed help. Jonah was aware that they were terrible. He didn't want to go. And then he got really angry because, of course, he wanted to control the divine grace. He wanted to control God's grace to say, I know I shouldn't have come. You were going to do something this nice. But the people all responded. A remarkable contrast here. Remarkable contrast. Here, they all wanted, and then, here's where we're going to end. This is, by the way, this is not a cliffhanger. You can read the text. But we'll end on this note. Lot went out of the door, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Is Lot aware of the intention of these people? Absolutely. Right? His first comment to them is that what you are about to do is wicked. What you are about to do is wicked. Do not act so wickedly, my brothers. As if somehow ingratiating yourself, right, to those who are bent on destruction will somehow lead to their change. Lot knows that they are wicked. Lot knows that they are about to do something that is destructive. And what he does is that he goes out and he shuts the door behind him. Somewhat symbolically doing what? Almost joining this group out here. Don't do this. And then he says, I have 2 daughters who have never known a man. That word know there, yada. Okay? Some translations like the Jerusalem Bible and some other translations, excellent, say, I have 2 virgin daughters. Okay? Which by the way, we can extrapolate, okay, fine. But actually the text says, because we don't want to miss this here, it's the same word. Send these people out so that we could get to know them. Right? And here you say, I have 2 daughters who have never known a man. And then he says that phrase, do with them as you please. So when I send out a survey for the Father of the Year in the Bible? Lot will not be on the list. Okay. This is where we will wonder now what happens with the daughters, with the men, and what God will do. But we'll have to wait till next week to figure that out. All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Yeah.